She and Harry bought a 9-bedroom, 14-bathroom, 18,000 square foot hillside house in Montecito, Santa Barbara for $14.65 million. That's 11 million pounds for you Brits. Why do you need 14 bathrooms? Has everybody been stricken with diarrhea and throwing up? I mean, you've got to just be rushing from bathroom to bathroom. There's 3 of you and one of them is in diapers. Why do you need 14 bathrooms? You don't even have 14 friends. Hey, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Revenge Review. We're going through Tom Bowers' Revenge. And when I tell you guys that we're almost done, I am not joking. We have just a tiny little bit left. A bunch of this in the back are endnotes and index, acknowledgments, so that's not, when I say that we're going to be done with this in like a couple weeks, I mean it. Now, am I ready to move off of Harry and Meghan? Most assuredly I am. But it's been a good run so far. I have our other book, but I'm going to wait to discuss that till later. Anyway, we have 2 chapters that we're reading today. We're going to be reading chapter 34 called Paradise, but it's like 2 pages, so you have to keep on. And then we're going to do the trial. The trial is all about the sorry case they had against the Mail on Sunday for publishing the letter or excerpts of the letter that she had written to her father. And it's the shoddiest case you've ever seen. You guys, I just did not follow that at all. I mean, that surprises no one who's been here for a while about how little I was following. But I didn't realize what a shoddy case it was and how many times she had to go back on her word. By the end of it, it was getting embarrassing. It was painful how many times she had to go back and be like, you just misunderstood what I said. I didn't totally say it that way. And it's just like, girl, maybe don't be a liar and you wouldn't have to keep changing your story. So we've got the trial, but next week, we're going to be getting all into Meghan and the Oprah interview and the next Netflix deals and all of this stuff that's been just all up in our face. I feel like that Harry and Meghan really came into my awareness with the Oprah interview. It's not like I didn't know he'd married her, but I didn't realize what a couple of clowns these 2 were until the Oprah interview. That for me was really when the scales fell from my eyes. And, I say that loosely because I never really was team Harry and Meghan in any way. I didn't care about Harry and Meghan, but I didn't care. I didn't actively dislike them either. I was like, whatever. But when I saw that Oprah interview, that was really what I was like, wait a second. What is she saying? Who is she talking to? What is happening here? So that was a big thing for me. So I really can't wait till next week when we can really get into some of that. But today's episode is also juicy details. I love it when Meghan starts looking like an idiot, which is most of the time. But when you can really pin down her idiocy, not just me being like, can you believe it? But really detailing for you how she's failed. Okay, let's get into chapter 34 called Paradise. Now, this is when we talk about how they found their home in Montecito. I knew it was palatial, but I had never gotten into the details. Why a man, a woman, and a child with no friends and no family to share their fortunes with would need a house of this size boggles my mind. I do not understand. And also with no revenue source readily available to them. It's like, how did they think that they could maintain this existence, this luxury existence? And why would they need so much room when they have... I just don't understand why you'd want to knock around this giant house with you and your kid. At this point, there's not even a Lilibet, so it's just them and their infant son. Do they need a house of this size? Listen, in May 2020, Meghan could say she had achieved the American dream. She and Harry bought a 9-bedroom, 14-bathroom, 18,000 square foot hillside house in Montecito, Santa Barbara for $14.65 million. That's 11 million pounds for you Brits. Why do you need 14 bathrooms? Has everybody been stricken with diarrhea and throwing up? You've got to just be rushing from bathroom to bathroom. There's 3 of you and one of them is in diapers. Why do you need 14 bathrooms? You don't even have 14 friends. What in the world? With 8 acres of lawns and views over the Pacific for what local agents called a bargain price, the property included, y'all, sit down, a gym, a spa, a cinema, tennis courts, swimming pools, a children's cottage, 2-bedroom guest house, because there's not enough room in the 9-bedroom, 14-bathroom mansion. You've got to have a 2-bedroom guest house and a 5-car garage. This is like obscene. Finally, Meghan's hard work had been rewarded with a palace in part of California's paradise. Her hard work, the only reason she got all of this was because of the Queen's hard work. If Meghan had never married into that royal family, you think anybody would have trusted her on that Montecito mortgage? Please. Okay, so obviously she wanted to move to Montecito because let's hear who her neighbors were. There was Ellen DeGeneres. There was Oprah Winfrey. There was Gayle King. Ted Sarandos was right down the road. Ted Sarandos, in case you don't know, is in charge of Netflix $17 billion annual budget for content. So, got to cozy up to him. His live-in girlfriend, Nicole Advent, is America's first Black ambassador to the Bahamas, a friend of Oprah Winfrey, and the daughter of Motown's former chairman, Clarence Avant, also known as the Black Godfather. So Meghan had really decided that she, these were her people. There wasn't anywhere else that she could live. This was the only suitable place. Dotted around her Hollywood celebrities included Gwyneth Paltrow and Katy Perry. Also, David Foster was right down the road. He is a Canadian music producer. And he was living in Montecito with his 5th wife, Katharine McPhee. And Foster apparently had become some kind of mentor to Harry. McPhee loved to say that David had a really, really beautiful relationship with Harry. And she even went so far as to say, they're so cute. They're like a father and a son. All right, but Katharine McPhee, let me just introduce you to somebody. He's called King Charles. He happens to be Harry's real dad. So I don't think he's needing a father figure. He's got a father. He chose to walk out of his father's life. Reports of their happiness in Montecito excited speculation in Britain about the future of their marriage. See, a lot of people had doubted that Harry and Meghan were ever going to make it. They called foul on that. Now, just recently today, I was listening to Angela Levin talk about Harry and how she thinks the marriage is over because Meghan isn't anywhere near Harry at any point. When he was doing his PR for his book Spare, where was Meghan? When he had to go to the coronation, where was Meghan? When he's had to do every court case lately, he didn't have to, he walked into it, but when he's gone to appear in court to fight and beg for money and, to scream about his rights, where is Meghan? She's the one who put all of this behavior and language in his mouth, but now she's not there to support him. And these are hard times for him. But where is she? She's just over here, trying to make the next deal. And it used to be when she was with the royal family that she was always clinging to him and clawing to him. And he could never get a breath of fresh air because she was always right up there, right up under his arm, never letting him 2 inches away from her. But now, where is she? Where's the Markle claw now? She can't be bothered to help him in any of his difficulties. And she's the one who put him in half of them. Anyway, at this point, when they had gotten married and these preceding years right after, people wondered how much longer this could last. But for all the people saying, Harry's going to wake up soon, it seemed like maybe he wasn't because he apparently seemed to feel very liberated by this new California life. It was all that he had hoped. So those who predicted the same misery as Edward VIII, who was surprised after his abdication when Britons turned against him, made the wrong comparison. Harry was never heir to the throne. Although the Queen gave the couple a chance to reconsider their departure after a year's trial of independent life, Harry had no intention of returning. So everybody's hope that maybe he would see the light, that hope was beginning to dwindle, at least at this point. Meghan had power and influence. All those directors, producers, agents, and actors who had witnessed her earlier struggles feared speaking out about their experiences. Yeah, because you remember when Meghan first came on the scene and people were trying to figure out, wait, who is this girl? We've never seen her. She's an actress, but we don't know who she is. People started poking around and trying to talk, and all the Hollywood people wouldn't speak against her because they realized that she had found herself inexplicably in the arms of power, and they wanted a little of that. So to come out swinging against her was not going to suit them very well. So that was the initial feeling about speaking against Meghan. That feeling has only strengthened over time because now here she's come back, the wounded victim. They're definitely not going to say anything bad about her now because there's too much American media favor. You know, she represents yet one more person of color who has been abused by white people. So they're not going to talk against her in any way. It'll be dangerous for them. Nobody was supportive of anybody criticizing somebody like Meghan, even for legitimate reasons. Legitimate reasons were swept under the carpet every time. I'm not feeling comfortable speaking of Meghan at this time, said David Bartus of Suits, which was a typical reply to journalist inquiries. Terrified of being blackballed or canceled, the only heroes in Los Angeles were invented by Hollywood for the screen. The Sussexes were protected as Hollywood stars. Embedded in Hollywood's culture, both transformed their image into warriors eager to brave the crossfire. So there was, for a brief blip in time, Meghan and Harry making the most of their victimhood, and they had found the perfect cultural moment to dish up their victimhood tale and collect all of the sympathy that they could. And they latched on to this whole idea that they could now preach to the masses. Now they could go out and tell everybody how that everybody ought to be. Because at the same time, Black Lives Matter had made another resurgence. Black Lives Matter was not a new movement in 2020, but it was its sort of second rebirth. It had died down and then it came roaring back like twice as strong and with like multiple heads. Harry saw that Meghan had been abused by white people because that's how white people are. They're just abusive monsters, you know. They're never going to treat anybody with even a hint of melanin in their skin with any decency. And unfortunately, Harry saw that this was going to be his wife's plight, but because he was a hero, a knight, if you will, he was going to protect her. Tom Bauer writes, Harry had been persuaded by Meghan about the evils of white privilege and the justification of Black Lives Matter. So he comes out with a script in his mouth because to come up with his own words has never occurred to him. My wife said recently, Harry told the young people being honored with Diana Awards in July 2020, that our generation hasn't done enough to right the wrongs of the past. I am sorry. I'm sorry that we haven't got the world to the place that you deserve it to be. Institutional racism has a place in our societies. Yes, it is still endemic. Don't even think it's gone away. Unconscious bias must be acknowledged without blame to create a better world for all of you. So what's Harry talking about here? He saw a cultural cause to jump on and to sort of further their own story of victimhood. Now, to make sure their star continues to shine bright in this arena, he's got to come out and talk about white privilege. Yet it's his white privilege of the royal family that Meghan married into, wanting to get close to that power. So shouldn't she sort of be condemned? If white people are terrible and constantly manipulating the system and constantly trying to keep people down, then wasn't she sort of a traitor to marry into a white family so she could get some of that power? Now, I don't believe any of that, but all I'm saying is by her own politics, isn't she sort of destroying her own narrative? She married one of the very white people who is so terrible and in a position of power and the whitest of all the white ones, the redheaded one. So it's almost like she doesn't mean anything she says. Harry was echoing a speech that Meghan had given 2 weeks earlier in a video about black people killed by the police. She'd made this video for the graduates of her old school, the Immaculate Heart. And in the video, she had said, "The first thing I want to say to you is that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you have to grow up in a world where this is still present." It's like, okay, but if you really believe that's so, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to make it better? What legislation are you going to champion? If you really want to get into politics, Meghan, this would have been a perfect opportunity to start talking about what you would do differently if you were in charge. Not necessarily running a campaign, but just getting it out there, what your ideas are, laying the groundwork. But Meghan is never, ever, ever, she can lay the groundwork when it comes to her own manipulation. But when it comes to actually doing work, the idea of sitting with something, studying how best to do it, figuring out a path and some sort of progress towards a goal, she doesn't know how to do any of that. She just wants it to come instantaneously, and then when it doesn't, she's out. But anyway, this would have been a perfect time for her to start her political aspirations, but no, she just wants to sit there and be like, I'm so sorry, it's so terrible. This is such a terrible world you grow up in, but let's be changes for good. In what way, Meghan? In Montecito, Harry separated himself from his family and his roots. Transforming himself into a campaigner, he attacked the Commonwealth as colonial and racist with an unforgivable history. For just 4 months earlier, as vice president of the Commonwealth Trust, he'd spoken with unquestioning praise about his grandmother's achievements. See, here's the problem. Harry doesn't know enough to comment on anything. We know from Spare how much he hated the history of his own country and how much he despised having to hear about all his family. I mean, there was like lengthy passages in Spare about how much he despised his history teacher and how disgusting he thought the whole topic was. So he doesn't know enough about his own country to even criticize it. But then this is the other thing that's just so embarrassing for the both of them. The Commonwealth is a voluntary organization. People want to be in the Commonwealth. What they're thinking about is the British Empire. It's an enormous miscalculation for them to even be discussing the Commonwealth when what they mean is the British Empire. And they want to talk about colonialism and all this. But it's like, if people don't want to be in the Commonwealth, they don't have to be. No one is forcing them to stay, and no one's going to cause a war if they asked to be released from that organization. Harry and Meghan just don't know of what they speak. So they come out with over and over and over and over criticizing the Commonwealth. And then when it was finally pointed out to them that, there's kind of a difference between the Commonwealth and the British Empire. Do you mean the British Empire? Then they wanted to backtrack and be like, we do love the Commonwealth. We do think that's a good organization, but England just has to do better. England needs to educate itself. Okay, which, can't stand that kind of language. You need to educate yourself. Why don't you educate yourself, Meghan, and figure out that there is a difference between the Commonwealth and the British Empire? Some people blamed Nicola Brentnall, the Commonwealth Trust chief executive, for encouraging their criticism. By the way, she resigned shortly after all this, so nobody wanted her around anyway because she's the one who sort of stirred up this ugly talk. Meghan was out there talking about unconscious racial bias of the Commonwealth, saying that there's no way they can ever move forward because they haven't acknowledged the past and all this. It's like, what are you even talking about? Her concept of foreign policy and the way the world works is so blanketed by ignorance. The fact that she even had the audacity to come out and say a thing is shocking. She comes out, we're going to be a little uncomfortable right now because equality does not put everyone on the back foot. It puts us all on the same footing, which is a fundamental human right. What are you even talking about, Meghan? What are these phrases? I don't even understand what she's trying to say. All right. So anyway, once it had been pointed out to them that their criticism of the Commonwealth was a bit misguided, and when I say a bit, I mean exceptionally so, they came out and tried to backtrack and talk differently, and they came out and were gushing about how incredibly proud they were to have once worked with the Commonwealth. But again, Britain, you need to right the wrong that's been done. Well, I think they did when they developed the whole idea of the Commonwealth. I mean, it's a voluntary organization. There's 1/3 of the world's population have agreed to be part of this organization. And the whole point of it is to rectify inequalities. What is it that Meghan wants done? She just knows the word Commonwealth, so she's just going to banter it about and roll it around in her mouth and say a bunch of things she doesn't understand and just mix a bunch of BLM jargon with the Commonwealth and just act like it all makes sense. And none of it does. Ultimately, all their tub-thumping damage the couple's popularity. Harry's negative rating in Britain increased from 35% to 47%. Meghan's rose from 46% to 59%. Their positive ratings fell to the mid-30%. The Queen scored 83% positive and William 80% positive. Of course, in America at this point, Meghan and Harry still remained really popular. I think we just saw these two and they came over and we thought that it was some kind of compliment to us as a country that they would choose us. And we just see anything that sort of glitters and has any hint of fame as something that we really want over here in America. And I also sometimes think that we greatly misjudge people who have a sense of, like, an outsized sense of determination. We think that some kind of bravery, some kind of courage. And sometimes we're really misguided and we struggle to be able to articulate that that's not courage, that's just enormous stupidity. When people do something that's so audacious, and rather than take a second and be like, oh, let's pump the brakes, are they crazy or are they brave? As Americans, we love the crazy and we'll call it brave because it excites us when people do things that are outlandish. As somebody who's an enormous patriot, I don't say that in a bad way. I mean, I just think that sometimes we just get too excited when people do things that are like out of the box. And I think it's part of our culture. I mean, I feel like the American Revolution poised us to be a country that loves to do things that are outlandish and crazy. And many times they are brave and sometimes it's just crazy. But I sometimes don't think we have a great cultural meter for when it's crazy and when it's brave. Anyway, we definitely were misguided in our embrace of Harry and Meghan. But I feel like a lot of people came to the realizations, some sooner than others, but I would say that we are all solidly aware of what we're dealing with now. We just were a little slow in the uptake. Okay, chapter 35. Let's talk about the trial. So you all remember from several chapters back, Harry and Meghan had wanted to take the Mail on Sunday to court because they said that the Mail on Sunday had erroneously painted Meghan as some kind of horrific diva, and also they had no right to publish excerpts of her father's letter, and it was a huge invasion of privacy, and she was shocked and appalled that it had ever happened, and blah, 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 blah. And her lawyer had written this ridiculously hyperbolic statement regarding how egregious the actions of the Mail on Sunday had been. But it was nothing substantial. There was nothing he could say other than a bunch of words, that they had maligned and mistreated Meghan and tried to paint her as some kind of terrible person and all of this. But there was never anything to substantiate these enormous claims. It was all just a lot of talk and jargon. So as we're going to see in this chapter, this is probably some of the cringiest stuff I've ever read. Meghan looks like an idiot. But rather than just back down and be like, okay, I totally miscalculated that. Let me see how I can spin this in my favor. Let me put out a positive story and just never talk about this again. No, instead she doubles down again and then a third time doubles down. And it's like, sister, let me sit you down and talk to you about when it's time to climb out of the ring, okay? You're beaten, bloodied, and broken. It's time to go. But no, she's like, I got another round in me. So Harry had said that the reason they had to go after the media was because the media had destroyed his mental health. And so vindication was his. He said, it was destroying my mental health, Harry told the British media. He blamed them for fleeing from London. I was like, this is toxic. So I did what any husband and father would do. I need to get my family out of here. Okay, well, Harry, here's the problem, though. Why then did you flee to the tabloid capital of the world, LA? You don't want paparazzi, but then you're like, we're going to go sit right down in the middle of Celebrity City and, just cross our fingers that nobody gets in our face with a camera. You're crazy. I'm not making a point that 10 billion people haven't already made, but if you really wanted privacy, you really didn't want any paparazzi in your face, well, then you need to maybe go back to Africa, which you said was your, one true love. I can guarantee you that there's not going to be a bunch of paparazzi following you all over Africa. And there you could have done some real good. And there you and your family could have lived in anonymity if you had really so chosen to do so. But you never wanted any of that. You just wanted to complain and complain and complain and be seen complaining. And why you would want that, I don't know. I just can't understand how he could never have projected that this lifestyle was going to be so unfulfilling. He knew from personal experience how fulfilling his stuff in Africa had been. And I don't really know what his charitable endeavors truly were in Africa. I know what he says they were. I know what he says he was involved in. I've never really heard anybody criticize his efforts in Africa, in the same way that they criticize what he was contributing to when he was in the military, or in the same way that he's been criticized for pretty much everything else he's done. When it comes to the stuff that he did in Africa, I've never heard anybody really go after him. He did post that dumb picture on Instagram where he was trying to look really brave with elephants, but his charities for kids with AIDS and picking up where his mom left off and with various charities. Seems that he was doing some kind of work. And even his own reporting on how he felt when he was in Africa doing that work just seems like, wouldn't you chase that feeling instead of chasing this Montecito lifestyle with your 14 bathrooms where you can poop in a different bathroom for 2 weeks straight and never find the same one again? Anyway, he felt like his privacy had been interfered with and that there had been no choice but to run to LA. No one will ever be able to explain to me their logic there. David Sherborne, who was at this point still her lawyer, but won't always be because he's going to fail her. He said in this statement that Meghan believed there was a pattern of intrusive and offensive articles in the Mail on Sunday. He went on to say, when power is enjoyed without responsibility, the trust we all place in this much needed industry is degraded. He said that there were 9 articles proving the newspaper's dishonesty and malicious intent. And he said that they had a clear agenda against Meghan. He said that there were hundreds of thousands of inaccurate articles about her in the media that were distorted, false, and invasive beyond reason, far outside of all the things that had happened in the Mail on Sunday. It was just the whole media was against her, but the Mail on Sunday was specifically against her. The Sussexes were honorable people, this statement claimed, and that they were being completely pulled apart for no reason other than to earn profits. And they had never cooperated with any kind of paparazzi, according to this statement. And they had always refused to offer themselves up as currency for an economy of clickbait and distortion. And they told their staff never to speak to anybody in the press. So this whole idea of leaks was just an egregious lie. And they were going to hold the media's feet to the fire. And in their mind, there was no chance that they could ever lose. Well, of course, we can only imagine how Thomas Markle felt about this sitting over in Mexico, scrolling the internet. He had some feelings on this. He was outraged is what he was. See, because that People magazine had really distorted that letter and it had defamed him. I mean, if anybody had been defamed, it wasn't Meghan, it was him. He said it was a total lie. It misrepresented the tone and content of the letter that Meghan had written. He said the letter was not an attempt at reconciliation the way the People magazine article had represented it, and that she had never had any intention of making, headway in their relationship by sending that letter. Even worse, the People article had vilified him as a dishonest, exploitative, publicity-seeking, and cold-hearted. The problem, though, with that position was that in suing the Mail on Sunday, Meghan was attacking him, the honest father. I mean, that's how Thomas Markle felt about it. And he also said that he thought that this was going to be explosive in court because Meghan had been such a massive hypocrite. Her negative portrayal in the media was largely her own fault, according to Thomas Markle. And I agree with him. He said that she was always preaching about the environment, yet she was always on private jets. If people had a complaint there, it's because there was a legitimate complaint to be had. Also, her constant talk about, the core purpose of the Archewell mission is to uplift and unite communities, one act of compassion at a time. Yet her entire downtime is spent trying to go after her dad, trying to undermine anybody who's ever said anything negative to her. If she's so concerned about world peace and let it begin with me, well, then maybe stop being so aggressive and unkind to others. She just can't walk the walk. She preaches and preaches and preaches, and she's over here trying to give a homily to this person and sit this person down for a little come to Jesus, but never is she acting out on any of the things she says, and people are starting to notice. So Thomas Markle was just like, bring it on. I can't wait to go to court with her because her hypocrisy is so beyond the pale that she won't have a leg to stand on in court. Thomas Markle was particularly annoyed by Meghan's claim, written by David Sherborne, that the Mail on Sunday caused the rift between the two by deliberately seeking to dig or stir up issues between her and her father. Yeah, Mail on Sunday caused the rift. What are you talking about? You and your dad haven't been able to get along for ages, way back since you were in high school and you were mad at him because he didn't support you when you wanted to have a little fit. She claimed that the Mail had harassed, humiliated, manipulated, and exploited this vulnerable man into giving interviews. She went even further. Her signed statement, right? She has agreed to this. Her signed statement alleged that she was concerned that her father's narrative that she had abandoned him and had not even tried to contact him, which was false, would be repeated when in fact she had tried to call him and text him and had even written a letter to him to try and persuade him to stop dealing with the media. Well, none of that is true, and he can prove it. So Thomas Markle is just furious. He's outraged. He's beside himself with indignation because the fact that she's just coming out and saying this with a straight face, it's like, who does she think she is that she can get away with this? Thomas Markle acknowledged that there had been media harassment, but that was before the wedding. That it wasn't this letter that had come out and that had been batted about between the different media outlets, that the letter had nothing to do with the origin of their discontent with each other. They had been at odds with each other far before the wedding because Meghan wouldn't let him come see her. She was real cagey. She clearly didn't want him at the wedding. The whole thing with his suit sort of being made like haphazardly. I mean, it just was so clear that she was not openly inviting him to come. Then when he says he's having a heart attack, she's like, shut it, Dad, stop lying. The Mail on Sunday had nothing to do with the fact they couldn't get along. Meghan had been a nightmare way before this had ever happened. Markle believed that he was going to die before he was 80, and he felt like, chop, chop, we got to get things going because I want to say my piece before I'm dead. And he said that, he couldn't wait to get to court. He called it a high noon showdown, and he was going to have his say, and he couldn't wait to give evidence, and he was all ready to be cross-examined. He said, and this is where, he said some things before where it's like, okay, simmer down, old man. He says that it'll be quite stunning for everyone, he promised, and excruciatingly embarrassing for the royal family. His particular target was Harry for his insults before the wedding. Meghan, he said scathingly, had turned into Harry's mother. He's candy-assed. He's whipped. To his misfortune, and I have to agree with Tom Bauer here, he says that Thomas Markle's anger spilled into self-harm. Thomas Markle said, "It's time to look after Daddy," he told British TV. "Meghan owes me." It was time she repaid Daddy for all he had done. Okay, well, that looks like some trashy behavior. Your daughter doesn't need to pay you back for anything. I don't exactly think that's unconditional love. You gave to Meghan happily back in the day. And yes, her behavior as an adult is crushing and beyond reason. But to come out swinging and saying she owes Daddy, that sounds dysfunctional. Okay, well, there's a long, complicated route before anybody's going to get cross-examined, right? In the British court, there's going to be a judge who has several hearings, and they are going to talk about how the relevant law should be applied. In the very nature of the process and the prejudices, the judge's decisions were unpredictable. With the addition to this potent mix of a member of the royal family as the claimant, neither side could be certain what facts would influence the judge and what bias would determine his interpretation of the law. Both sides could only agree that Meghan's claim was a landmark case that would determine England's privacy laws for many years. The Markles, realizing that things weren't looking real good for them, decided that they better come out and show the world that they're really nice people who care about the starving homeless. Okay, so doesn't matter what anybody wants to tell you, okay? We're super nice people, okay? We're going to drive our Porsche and our Cadillac out to the starving masses and chuck some food out, We care 10 minutes worth. So Tom Bauer writes that conscious about their image before the trial starting in London, Meghan and Harry's publicist authorized the distribution of photographs of the two handing out meals to the homeless in Los Angeles. Organized by Project Angel Food, founded by Marianne Williamson, the author of the self-help books and a friend of Oprah Winfrey, the couple stood in safety by the open doors of their black Porsche SUV and a Cadillac Escapade to distribute the packages. After a short spell of charity, they drove back to their Montecito haven. Just the fact that they even have so much organization going on behind the scenes of them going and doing charity work. These photographs being distributed, the fact that they've got to get Oprah's friend to tell them which charity they should be involved in. It's like, just go down to the soup kitchen and serve some soup. You know what I mean? It's like, go down to your local church and pack some bags for the homeless and don't bring your cameras. Like, just do good things because it's the right thing to do. Not because somebody's going to know about it, not because you have a court case coming. You would have to work less hard if you just did the things you say that you are. Be who you say you are, and you won't have to have all these cover-ups all the time. Standing by the safety of her Porsche, she's over here handing out packages. Don't touch me. Ew, ew, ew. Don't get too close. She's just disgusting. Now, the judge in this whole case was a guy named Mark Warby. Mark Warby was rated by newspapers to be very fair. He was experienced in media law, and when he had been a lawyer, had represented the Mail on Sunday and the News of the World in 2 separate cases in which the judge in both of those cases had appeared very biased. So having experienced trying to litigate a case with judges who were very clearly capricious and short-sighted, biased, completely willing to lean towards the claimant with the most power in the case, he knew what it was to be on the other side as a lawyer. And so having had that experience with judges who were kind of really sloppy with the evidence in front of them and just chose what seemed like the safest option, he wanted to do his best to be very fair to both parties here. I think it was a pretty good choice. It was a good thing that he was the judge here. To talk a little bit about his history, he had tried 2 cases. And the first case that he had tried, he had been representing the News of the World, and he'd been acting against Max Mosley. The head of Formula One motor racing had objected to the newspaper's expose of this sort of, by the way, hide your kids for this one, this sadomasochistic orgy with 4 paid women, and they had been put in German military uniforms for this little shindig. And Mosley said that he wasn't doing anything that should have, incited public interest in it, because those women who were dressed in German military uniforms hadn't done anything that was overt overtones of Nazism. So really it wasn't of any public interest that he'd wanted women dressed up as Nazis, because they weren't acting like Nazis during their little meeting of the minds. And what I have to say to that is, do the women need to be heiling Hitler while they're gyrating for it to be overtly Nazi? Like, how do you determine what is and is not overtly Nazi? I'd say the uniform's a good start on the overtones of questionable associations, but that's not how the judge saw it. And so people were like, well, that seems weird. That it seems pretty clear that he was trying to reenact some kind of disgusting fantasy. And because it involved Nazis, it seemed like that should be of public interest, but the judge said no, it should not. Then the other case that Warby had been involved in, where he had been ruled against, was the whole situation with Prince Charles' diary. Okay, in that time, he had been representing the Mail on Sunday. And Prince Charles had gone to Hong Kong, and I guess he'd had some kind of salacious diary about the experience, and it had been widely circulated. Everybody was reading it. Yet when the Mail on Sunday decided to publish excerpts from it, they were condemned, railed against, and lost in court about this whole thing. And some believe that the judgments in both cases exposed the judiciary's prejudice against the media. So again, having experienced what it was to lose when it seemed like you had an open and shut case, Warby could be expected to be a good judge, because he wouldn't want to be like those judges who had presided over the 2 cases in his past. Based on his advice as a barrister, the Mail on Sunday might have trusted Judge Warby to consider carefully its robust defense against Meghan's claim, namely that she constantly sought publicity and could have no reasonable expectation of privacy. First, because she had knowingly allowed her 5 friends to leak details of the letter to People magazine. Second, because Thomas Markle was entitled to expose the magazine's false claims that Meghan had been reaching out to repair the relationship. And third, because she wrote her letter in the expectation that it might be leaked to the media. So the fact that Meghan thought she even had a case when the evidence was so clearly against her was surprising to everybody. Yet she pressed on. In the 3 weeks into pre-trial hearings, the newspaper's hopes rose. Warby made 3 dramatic decisions about the evidence and about the claims that Meghan was coming at them with. So the first of these decisions was Meghan's claim that the Mail on Sunday had deliberately exploited her father be struck out of the case. So no more of that language. They weren't exploiting your dad. The second one, and similarly, Meghan's claim that the newspaper had harassed and humiliated her father and deliberately manipulated and exploited a vulnerable and fragile individual was ordered to be dropped. Again, what are you talking about? There was just a real lack of any credible evidence. The judge also rejected Meghan's claim that the Mail on Sunday had waged a dishonest campaign against her. He called her case wholly inadequate, impermissibly vague, and irrelevant. All of Sherborne's hyperbole was struck out. So Meghan was ordered to pay £67,888. As a sideswipe, the judge criticized Shillings, who had instructed Sherborne to help Omid Scobie to post pro-Meghan messages on Twitter. Like, the whole thing was just disgusting waste of everybody's time. You know, quit this middle school drama. Go back home, pay your money, be quiet. This should have been when Meghan climbed out of the ring and was like, oops, I made a giant mistake on that one. I shouldn't have done it. No. She keeps fighting, despite the fact that Mark Stevens, who was a media lawyer, came out and said, for Meghan, this judgment is like a train plowing into a petrol tanker at a level crossing. She's been humiliated. He advised that Meghan should just give up because she had no chance of winning a case that was focused on whether the public interest and freedom of expression overrode her rights to privacy and copyright. It's never going to happen, especially when she was so embroiled in so much of that negative commentary. If she had never had anything to do with this story in People magazine, if she had an airtight case, and she had written a letter to her dad that was legitimately leaked and she hadn't tried to leak the letter, if she had not continually and constantly had proof against her that she was always working with Omid Scobie so that he could come out and, sort of be her spokesperson, there's just too many opportunities for her to be exposed. If she had never done any of that, she might have had a case. But she just was such a liar and she was such a manipulator. But it was so easy to see how she was a liar and manipulator. The fact that she ever thought that she was ever going to win. And the fact that she would be like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me go in for numero dos. It's like, come on, girl. You got to just not. You got to know when you're losing. She does not know when she's losing. She doubles down. The defeat didn't do anything to set her back. It galvanized her. And that shoddy lawyer of her, Shillings. So Shillings and Meghan strove on. And they kicked David Sherborne to the curb. And then they got two expensive QCs, including Justin Rushbrook, who was Boris Johnson's great friend. This time, Meghan changed her strategy. All right. This is the new strategy. Instead of exclusively attacking the newspaper, she decided to turn her anger onto the palace and onto her palace advisors. She said, not only had they left her unprotected while pregnant, she now pleaded, but when faced by an onslaught of hundreds of thousands of inaccurate articles about her, Kensington Palace's spokesperson would only say no comment. To her fury, without any discussion, she was prohibited from defending herself, compelled to suffer in silence. Her closest friends, a special sisterhood, became deeply worried for her mental health, and to save her, they had spoken anonymously to People magazine. So this is the story now. Because she was suffering so egregiously with her mental health, because she was being muzzled by the palace, her friends had to come to her rescue. Else she would kill herself. I mean, these were the stakes, and it's just because her friends loved her. That's why they spoke to People. It wasn't because she was trying to, defend herself in any way. They just loved her so much because of the special sisterhood of the traveling pants. Well, this is getting her into some dicey waters because all of these unsubstantiated and problematic claims are not helping her seem like a stable person. She continues to change her story, and it just makes her look like she's, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. For the first time, Meghan admitted that two of those friends had been told about the letter. Oh, okay, so now we're getting a little honesty here. Okay, actually, some of my friends did know, but it's just because I was having such a mental health crisis, I had to tell them why I was so down, okay? They could hear it in my voice. And we're such a close sisterhood that, to lie and say nothing was going on, I mean, they could tell. They knew. So yes, I did tell them about my dad's letter. But it's because we're so close. They were going to get it out of me anyway. She still said that she hadn't authorized any of them to speak publicly and claimed that she was unaware of the People's article until its publication. That is some BS. If you told your friend something in confidence and you were super against the media and the paparazzi and articles being written without your consent, and then your two friends hustle over to People magazine, it's not exactly an obscure publication, and decide to give their little take on your sad sack situation, I'm pretty sure that Meghan would have been mad about that. If she had not authorized them to do it and they did it anyway, they would no longer be her friends. If she really cared about her privacy. The Mail on Sunday expected to discover the truth once all Meghan's text and email messages to the five friends were disclosed. But Meghan condemned the Mail's attempt to discover the five friends' identity as playing a media game with real lives and vicious. She never complained to People magazine's editor about their inaccuracies. So it's just this weird game where she picks and chooses who she's going to go after. Yes, why didn't she go after People magazine? If they're over here publishing the words of her friends, they're over here playing a media game with real people's lives. Why didn't they, if she's so worried about the integrity of the media, why is she not going after People for saying, why didn't you deny this story? Why did you take this story to print? You didn't ask me about any of this. Nobody reached out to me. It's like if she's that worried about the integrity of the media, she should also be taking People to court. If this is really the hill she wants to die on, she should be taking everyone to court who's ever spoken about her without her authorization. Also, by the way, your friends interjected themselves into this media game when they decided to go talk to People, authorized or not. So you can't come to your friends' defenses now and say, stop playing with my friends' lives. These are real people. Your friends decided to play the game when they jumped on the court. Meghan also adopted a different attitude towards the media promotion of Scobie and Duran's book, Finding Freedom. Okay, you guys, this whole storyline, I was just like, I about rolled my eyes out of my head. You guys remember when they were writing that book, and you remember how many times they went back and forth with Jason Kanoff as their spokesperson to Omid Scobie. They were desperate for him to have a meeting with Omid Scobie and Duran, and they constantly were changing things they wanted said. They were sending memos back and forth. She had a 2-page memo to Jason Kanoff about what she wanted said and what he needed to convey and the parts of the story she wanted clarification on. And so not only was it Jason Kanoff, but it was like 4 other members of the palace who were aware of what was going on with both the letter that she sent to her dad and this situation over here with the book. You guys remember that when they were working on the book, even though they were highly involved in the content of that book, Harry continued to say, we can't ever know. No one can ever find out that we were involved in this. And Jason Kanoff was all like, yes, we have to find a way that we can say hand on heart, we never knew anything about this. That was kind of hard, though, because it was so clear from the content in the book that unless Scobie was just an enormous liar, he'd had intimate access to them. So Meghan needed to either be coming out and saying, yes, I was involved in this book. That's why there's so many intimate details about my relationship with Harry that nobody else would know except for me and Harry. So yes, it's clear I obviously helped with the book. Or she needs to be suing Omid Scobie, right? But she's doing neither of those things. She's denying that she had anything to do with the book, yet she doesn't have any issues with the book that was just written, that's all about her and her life. Well, I mean, it's a positive portrayal, so of course she's not going to go after that. But there's such hypocrisy. If she's so concerned about her privacy, every single outlet that has ever said anything about her that she did not authorize, she should be taking those people to court. So it's just so clear that she just doesn't like negative conversations about her. Anyway, the book's about to come out. Omid Scobie is under his own sort of microscope because his truthfulness is in question. He's been wandering around telling everybody he's 33, but there's evidence that he's actually 39. He has come out with like an entirely new face. He used to look completely different. People are just wondering, like, what is his deal? What kind of a shyster is he? Questionable individual. That this guy is, this little, climbing the ladder and looking to scale that greasy pole himself. He's very much in a lot of ways like Meghan. He just seemed like another operator, and people were starting to question him. And if somebody like this could be trusted to write a truthful account of what had happened with Harry and Meghan. As Meghan's acknowledged cheerleader, everyone believes Scobie's assertion that the book was written with the participation of those closest to the couple. Kensington Palace, Scobie wrote truthfully, had also introduced the author to people close to Meghan. Scobie left the reader in no doubt that he had also enjoyed close access to Meghan and Harry, claiming to, quote, have spoken when appropriate to the couple themselves. So he has come out saying he's talked to Harry and Meghan. He has said it out of his own mouth. All right. So let's not forget that fact, because it's going to become really, really, really relevant on the next page. The best-selling book cast Meghan as the victim of sexist and prejudiced palace courtiers, who snidely referred to Harry's showgirl and said that she comes with a lot of baggage. Yeah, both of those things are pretty true. She was a girl on a show, and she does come with a lot of baggage. You know, it's like, Meghan, own who you are already. The book's narrative portrayed Meghan as a popular outsider distrusted as a successful woman of color. On what grounds would anybody just dislike you because you're a successful woman of color? Like, who's over there with some kind of draconian, antiquated, sad sack mentality disliking you just because you have risen as a woman of color to some prominence? Find me the person who's still functioning like that and is a contributing member of society, and I would love to know who that person is. Who's that person with those kind of broken ideas who's managed to make it in society to this day? Now, you want to find me some kind of mental cripple who's over there still thinking those things? All right, but I'm not talking about that person. That person is shunned from society in this day and age. I'm talking about a real person who has managed to make it and still acting like this, that's somebody who is, a biracial woman and has become successful. There's some kind of coup against her. That does not exist. Royal aides were described as vipers. William was criticized for provoking a rift with Harry. Thomas Markle was portrayed as a bankrupt, unloving, and deceitful father who deliberately failed to arrive at the wedding. Kate was blamed for snubbing Meghan. This whole book is full of caricatures of evil. Strangely, Scobie dismissed the allegations about the pre-wedding argument between Kate and Meghan. He claimed that no tears were shed by anyone and that was a fine time. Nobody was mad at anybody. According to the Sussexes' rules of privacy, media criticism of them was unacceptable, but they could assist Scobie in criticizing the royal family. Then, unexpectedly, Meghan changed her, quote, truth. The Sussexes somersaulted. They did not collaborate with the authors of the book, said Meghan's spokesman, nor were they interviewed for it. In a signed statement, Jenny Affia, her shilling solicitor, denied on Meghan's behalf that the Duchess had spoken to Scobie or given authority to anyone to speak to the authors on her behalf. Meghan herself described the Mail's allegations that she had helped Scobie as false, fantastical, and a conspiracy theory. Well, when anybody tells you it's a conspiracy theory, I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to dig a little deeper on that one. She denied knowing how much help the authors got from her staff and denied being given the opportunity to make changes or fact check. It was not me and had nothing to do with me, she said. Meghan's truth was supported by Omid Scobie. So Meghan's over here denying she had anything to do with it. And then her little lapdog comes yapping out. Was like, yeah. That's right. I didn't ask for their help. She didn't know anything about it. She didn't even know I was writing a book. I'm like besties with her, but she had no idea we were doing this. Any suggestion that the Duke and Duchess collaborated on this book is false, says Scobie in a signed statement. At the end of the statement, he acknowledged that signing a misleading statement was punishable as a contempt of court. Signed it anyway. Scobie knew that the 2-hour briefing with Jason Knopf required the Sussexes' approval, as did the help provided by Kayleigh Thomas Morgan and Sarah Latham. The author had signed a misleading statement to support Meghan against the Mail on Sunday. The Sussexes were now indebted to Scobie to maintain the pretense. In the future, he was going to leverage this. Among his early bonuses was his revelation about the Sussexes' private video call with the Queen on her 94th birthday. Oh, whoopee. I don't really see that as a big scoop, but okay. Armed with Scobie's cast-iron denial, Meghan's lawyers asked the judge to dispense with the trial. Really, so she wouldn't have to be cross-examined. They knew everything was going to fall apart on cross-examination. And they just wanted the judge to issue his summary judgment about privacy. Her letter, the lawyers claimed, was private, personal, and sensitive, and it wasn't ever intended to be made public. The Mail argued that during her consultation with Knopf, Meghan anticipated the letter being made public, and that she had breached her own privacy by allowing her friends to speak to People magazine on her behalf. They had 49 examples of intimate details described by Scobie, and that was listed as evidence of Meghan's cooperation with the book. Included in some of those examples were their holiday plans that nobody would have known about, Meghan's hygiene and bathroom routines in Botswana. Okay, side note, why in the world is that being written about? Why do we need to know how she was using the bathroom in Botswana? Details of her first meeting with Harry in Soho House and details about who said, "I love you" first. Well, who would know that if it wasn't Meghan herself or somebody that was attached to Meghan, And if Meghan, again, had not authorized those details going forward, Meghan should be suing the authors of the book. The details were so precise, claimed the newspaper, that they could only have come from the Sussexes. Oh, no. The Sussexes refuted the mail. Meghan listed many of the book's errors, inventions, and creative license as proof that she had not cooperated with Scobie. But again, how would we know that? How would we know that her denials are the truth? No one could know that. Meghan's conviction that her misleading statement would not be exposed was not an aberration. I mean, let's remember the fact that she's been lying to us these many years about her childhood and no one said boo. So she thinks she can just go out and say whatever and no one's ever going to call her on it. But she's not ever been in court trying to lie either. So it seems like she could have put two and two together and figured out this was a different scene. Now, Meghan got around this later as she was being called out on stuff by saying she just forgot. The classic line of the liar. Bauer writes, although she would later assert that she had forgotten her conversations, emails, and her 2-page memorandum to Jason Knauf, others would conclude that she had decided to take a gamble. If she admitted cooperating with Scobie, her claim against the newspaper would go to trial. Subject to cross-examination, she would also have to reveal all of her text messages. So she's really put herself between a rock and a hard place. By nature, Meghan viewed other people through self-interest, or as she called it, being kind to yourself. Her outspoken complaints in Finding Freedom, and again in her court statement that she felt unprotected in Kensington Palace, irritated her former staff. To such a point that 4 officials, Knauf, Cohen, Latham, and Jones, all said that they would come and testify in trial without taking sides about the creation of that letter. Just given the facts. They did know about the letter, they helped create the letter, and they did it with the intention of it being leaked. In September 2020, the Mail on Sunday filed a statement challenging Meghan's original claim that she had not spoken to the authors of Finding Freedom. Oh, you guys, I love this. This was my favorite part. In December 2018, the newspaper declared Meghan had told the Kensington Palace communications team, led by Jason Knauf, that her, quote, friends were assisting the authors. Oh, so you did know a book was being written, and you had told people to help with it. Interesting. The newspaper questioned why Meghan did not protest that excerpts of her letter to her father were quoted in the book. Why had she objected only to the newspaper's alleged offense? Oh. The plot thickens. So the letter in question that has caused all of this was quoted in Omid Scobie's book? How did he get a hold of the letter? And how is it that she's not mad that he quoted the letter? If she cooperated with Scobie's flattering account, declared the newspaper, she had not been telling the truth. By implication, she could not claim privacy. What a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. 7 weeks later, lo and behold, what do you think? Meghan changes her statement. She now admitted authorizing a friend to explain to Scobie the true position about the relationship with her father to, quote, prevent any further misinterpretation that she had abandoned him. She also admitted that Sarah Latham had helped to fact-check for the authors. Oh, suddenly her memory becomes clear. Oh, yeah, actually, my staff actually was helping with that. Oh, I guess I have baby brain. She sought to minimize her latest admission by volunteering that she didn't know if and to what extent the communication team were involved in providing information for the book. Clearly, she forgot the 2-page briefing note to Jason Knauf. That kind of just slipped her mind. The staff was involved, but I don't know how, and I really don't know what they said. Yes, I did provide a 2-page, multiple-pointed memo to Jason Knauf to guide his meeting with Omid Scobie, but I really don't know what they talked about. As Meghan's version crumbled, Kayleigh Thomas Morgan was also named as providing introductions for the authors. Meghan admitted that Knauf did contribute to drafting the letter, and that one of her friends spoke to Scobie about the letter. She also admitted that her letter was not an attempt at reconciliation. The Mail on Sunday was delighted. The newspaper believed that Meghan's admission reinforced their defense that she could not have, quote, reasonable expectations of privacy. Their cause appeared to be aided by Scobie's contradictions. First, asserting in the book that he had spoken to the Sussexes. Okay, so this wasn't like some passing comment. It's in the book he spoke to them. And then denying in a signed statement their help. Francesca Kay, a master of the Chancery Division, decided that Scobie's honesty should be tested. It's not what he says, but what he does not say, which may be instructive at trial, Kay declared. Pertinently, she also noted Meghan's contradictions. It's a simple case, Kay anticipated. If it's a house of cards, then it will fall down quickly at trial, but I'm satisfied it is arguable. Meghan was again ordered to pay all the lawyers' fees, totaling £178,000 so far. Everything seemed set to test Meghan's veracity in the witness box. And this was surprising because nobody in Buckingham Palace thought that Meghan would actually ever make it to the witness box. It just seemed like that could just never happen. The case was just so weak. How would the judge ever allow it to be tried? Accordingly, the 4 palace staff instructed David Engel, a solicitor, to send a clear message to the newspaper's lawyers. While the 4 did have evidence as to whether Meghan anticipated that her letter would be leaked, wrote the lawyer, he refused to describe the evidence, but he did say, "We have it, and if we're called upon to give it, we will, and it will be incriminating." Warby, the judge, was left in no doubt that the Palace 4 would provide critical eyewitness evidence in a trial. Meantime, in the sunshine 5,000 miles away, the soothing assurances of her lawyers minimized the glitches of the legal battle in London. Meghan was busy laying the groundwork for the starring role in the next greatest appearance of her career. And next week, we'll talk all about how she is greasing deals, getting on to Oprah's program, making deals with Netflix. It's going to be a crazy week next week when we talk about all that Meghan was doing behind the scenes and why she can just move so blithely from all of this drama onto the next thing because, she doesn't sit too long and consider a thing. If she's failing, she sees that as some kind of wind beneath her wings. She's just going to prove everyone wrong. And that's how she's driven her whole life. I'm just going to prove everyone wrong. But I think that when people start making media appearances, especially when they have court cases pending and they start making their media appearances and she's over there on Oprah, it's almost like an admission of guilt. If you're an innocent person, you can let the trial carry out and you won't have any cares or concerns because there's no evidence against you. If you are pure as the driven snow, what are they going to say about you? You can be silent and trust the process. But when you are a manipulator, an abuser, and a liar, you have to go out and continue to spin your narrative because how's anybody going to know the difference if you don't tell them? How are you going to be able to defend yourself in court if you don't have public opinion on your side? So anyway, that is the end of this episode. This weekend, we will have Stories I Tell Myself. And so you can look forward to that. And then next week, of course, we'll have our episodes on Revenge Review. Thank you so much for joining me again. Thank you for all the people who have sent prayers and well wishes for our move. We are officially out of Texas. We are now in Alabama for the month. And then we will be moving to Washington, D.C. So that ought to be interesting. Thank you all for the support. This is a fantastic community. I hope you have a great day. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.